Good evening, everyone, and apologies that I can't be there tonight. We've had a little family emergency, and I am truly sorry because this is something that I absolutely love doing. I love meeting people and sharing something that I'm passionate about, which is our night sky. Now, I start this talk, and I'm just trying to get out of the way of the picture, with a lovely photo of the Earth taken from space, our beautiful continent, a beautiful landmass, which is the darkest, clearest night skies in the world, probably. And we're very, very fortunate to have very little light pollution. Those little blobs of white light that you can see on the map there are light pollution, and I'm about to explain that to you. But let me tell you a little bit about myself. I am the founder of the Australasian Dark Sky Alliance. We've been going for about 7, 8 years now, and our mission is to teach people what light pollution is and why valuing darkness is so important and why Australia is so relatively amazing for having relatively dark skies still. So my background started with travel and tourism, and for about 20 years, I've been taking tour groups all around the world to see dark sky places. In places really very much like this. We've been up to the Arctic about 7 times now and have seen the aurora borealis every single time. This would be one of our most amazing experiences where I ducked out after dinner somewhere between main course and on dessert and looked up and said to everybody, run, get your cameras. This is an amazing event taking place. At that stage, it was one of the best auroral displays that scientists had seen in about 75 years. So we were truly blessed. But it doesn't matter, and it still doesn't matter wherever we go now with our tour groups. I still look up all around the world and I come back to Australia and think we are so lucky to have those beautiful dark starry skies that you could probably see almost every night of the year. But 80% of the world's population cannot do that. So you are in a unique and VIP special group because you can probably see a night sky that only about 20% of the world can see. And so my quest was, well, what are we doing to preserve that? And what are we doing to try and instigate valuing that? And that's what set me about setting up the Australasian Dark Sky Alliance. Now, just to sort of replicate what I just said, this is a picture that was taken for a competition for great lighting design. And you might find it a little bit hard to see, but there are actually 2 stars in this picture, and they were lamenting how wonderful it was. Not lamenting, celebrating how wonderful it was that you could see those 2 stars and that the nightscape was relatively dark. This image is taken in St Leonard's in Sydney. Now, if we were to look at those same 2 stars in the country, in fact, this is a picture taken at Siding Spring Observatory, those same 2 stars would almost get lost in the thousands that you can see above you there. And I've just highlighted those same 2 stars. So they're the pointers to the Southern Cross. So that just shows how much light that we're sending up to the night sky, ruining our beautiful celestial display. So why is light pollution an issue, and what should we be doing to try and keep our planet dark? Why should we be trying to do that? Well, the very simple thing is that life began on Earth with light. And very specifically, we have had darkness as well. So there was always a balance. There was, whether you're in the north in the Arctic or whether you're in Australia, you had a very relatively systematic pattern of day and night. So whether you were in the northern hemisphere and you had very long midnight sun and polar nights, or whether you were like in Australia where we have relatively balanced 12-hour day cycles of day and night, life evolved around that. So, we know that life began in water, and that filtration of penetration of light into the water was where cells began to develop and grow. And it's particularly that blue light that actually triggers us as humans, in fact, all living cells as far as we can see, to be activated. So we as a diurnal species need that blue rich light to actually make us buoyant. And that's why we are very active during the middle of the day. Now, our first sort of sense of artificial light at night was probably fire. And we've been able to use that to our benefit. We've been able to keep ourselves warm. It gives us the opportunity to see a little bit better. It might also protect us from wildlife. But we've probably had that for about, they say about 100,000 years, maybe we've been using that as a light. And it's a natural source as well. So it's artificial, but it's also a natural source of light. And the environment has had time to adjust to that. Now let's think, we've had 3.8 billion years of day-night cycle, so a regular light pattern and a regular dark pattern. And then for about 100,000 years, we've had a source of fire to actually brighten up our night a little bit as well. Now, the other source of night at light was the moon, and we know how particularly bright that can be and how amazingly different that can be between new moon, when you can virtually see nothing if you're in a really dark area, and a new moon and full moon, which is absolutely dazzling and possibly keeps us up at night. But we now have lights that are 150 times brighter, and we know that those lights are actually really truly impacting our natural environment. Actually, I'll just quickly throw in, there was a report 2 days ago actually showing that lights from sports fields such as this are actually impacting bird life, probably making them sing an hour extra a day, just because they don't know that it's darkness and they should be going to sleep. They're still singing, and that singing is actually very, very punishing for their body. It takes a lot of energy. So we're just our sports lights, etc., are really, really making a big impact. So point number 2, light pollution is the fastest growing pollutant in the world. Now, you will probably have thought that if you saw this headline, pollution increases by 11% year on year, you would probably be thinking that we were talking about plastics. But as I just said, light is the fastest growing pollutant. And this image of the Earth over flying over Italy there, you can see the boot, you can see Europe as we go overhead. You can even see the glow of the atmosphere there, a bit of aurora action. So this is giving us lots of information about our planet, but it's also showing waste. Just like plastic in an ocean, this light being thrown up into the atmosphere is light that is not being used where it should be. It's causing carbon footprint, and it's detrimental to those birds and us. And I'll get into that a little bit more. This is another illustration of that. And again, you can actually do a bit of a comparison here. I love to do this, where you can see the Northern Hemisphere is very heavily light polluted, and Australia is still relatively dark. Now, the thing about light is that it's become our friend. Like the saying, moths to a flame, we really are drawn to it. So events like Vivid in Sydney or Light Up in Canberra, they are drawing amazing crowds, and they give us an opportunity to do things at night. And light is a sense of entertainment for us now. We use it for our LED screens, we use it for billboards, we use it for events such as this. But whilst I'm in the tourism industry and have a background in it, and I really love the fact that we can draw people to this, I can see that there's opportunities to do it a little bit more wisely. So not throwing lights up into the night sky like this. And the interesting thing is also about Vivid is that during Vivid, they turn the street lights down, and I believe it's up to 25%, so that the other lights are more obvious. So we do have the way of using technology to actually dim and control our lighting better. Currently, we're using light like we used to use water in the 70s and 80s, where we used to throw it up into the sky. We used to throw it all over the place. If it ran over the street, it didn't matter. We used it without thinking. It was an endless resource, and we thought we could do whatever we wanted with it. And that's what we're trying to do at the Australasian Dark Sky Alliance, is to actually change that mindset. How do we change it so that we think about, are we using the light that we really need right now? And if we don't need it, let's don't put it on. Is it going in the right direction? Is it being used for the right purpose? So that's our goal. And here's an example of sky glow, and you might be able to see Griffith, for example, from where you live. It's that glow of light that shines from a distance. Now, light from Siding Spring, so light from Sydney, I should say, is actually able to be seen 350 kilometres away as the crow flies at Siding Spring Observatory. So we know light travels. We can see it from a very long distance. And I guess just as I throw this in about birds before, if you were a bird and you saw this, would you think that, and you were on a migratory path, would you think that was maybe dawn and that you would fly to it rather than the actual dawn horizon that you're looking for? So, we know we're throwing off migratory bird paths, etc., as well with these sky globe plumes. And here's a way of telling that you're in a dark area or perhaps a light polluted area. The dark area on the left-hand side, you can see that there are actually clouds in that image, but they are silhouetted against the background of the night sky. The night sky, the starry night sky, is actually quite light, and it is actually reflecting, or it's actually creating a silhouette, as I say. But on the right-hand side, you can see that the clouds in the sky there are actually being lit up, and that's because of all this reflected light, all this light that's being thrown up into the night sky, not doing anybody any good up there. Certainly the astronauts in the International Space Station do not need to know where you are at that time of night. And the thing is that as I said, we're using it for everything. We use it to light up a fishbowl, we light up our trees, and we create these illuminations everywhere. And it is basically becoming a death by 1,000 cuts. It is everywhere all the time. So number 3, why should we try and protect our night skies? Well, our history, our universal history as a global species is intertwined with the night skies. Think about all the stories that you've been told about the night sky, the little songs you've sung. I mean, everyone sung Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star in, well, English-speaking world. And we've got, Shakespeare, all those sorts of stories around the moon, the sun, the stars, everything rotating together. And then our own wonderful Indigenous people have had stories for eons around the night sky. And I really do acknowledge the elders for the wonderful stories and the knowledge base that they had around our night sky. If you were in a dark place, you didn't have lights, you didn't have television, and all you could do was look up at the night sky, you would probably become very aware of what was going on. And that was what was happening as the Aboriginal traditional owners of Australia saw the night sky. They saw, rather than the connected dots of Scorpion and the Gemini and all those sorts of constellations, they saw the dark emu, a beautiful mass of darkness within our Milky Way. And they noticed that when that was moving across the night sky, it also correlated with what was happening on the ground. So as the emus were sitting on their eggs, it also looked like it was sitting in the horizon on the ground. So very, very important to Indigenous peoples. And what we're finding is that by throwing up light into our night sky, not telling those stories anymore, we are actually eradicating history and storytelling of these people. And finally, just all those Polynesian groups, etc., that use the night sky to celestial navigate the globe. What are we doing if we lose this? We're losing not only tradition, but possibly also that curiosity and that fascination of where we've come from and why we are here on this earth. Human health and well-being, well, they rely on it. And the thing is about light pollution is that we don't really feel any detriment to light. It doesn't smell, it doesn't make us scratch, it doesn't hurt our ears, and so we think it's not doing us any harm. But what is actually happening is as we change through the day, as we go from that high brightness of the daytime when we go into this time of twilight in the evening, we are actually being impacted. And this little guy taught us a lot not that long ago. In 2017, these 3 scientists, or I should say that some scientists were awarded a Nobel Prize, and these are them, Rosbosch, Hall and Young, were awarded a Nobel Prize for actually studying the fruit fly and seeing that it actually went through a periodic time of day where it was very active, where it would feed, where it would snooze, and then worked out that it was very much in line with the time of light or the type of light that this little fruit fly was receiving. And just like us, we now know this as circadian rhythms. We know that we're most active in the daytime. You can see this on Wikipedia if you want to go and have a look at it. But this is our human diurnal circadian rhythm. And we have all these sorts of things, our blood pressure going up, our lowest, our highest temperature, and just even our blood sugars changing throughout the day because of that light trigger. So what happens is when we put in an artificial light at night, we are getting artificially triggered. And we know this all happens through the eye. We have rods and cones, which tells us depth and colors, but we also now know that there's IPRGCs or melanopsin, and that actually is picking up not just the color of light, but the type of light, and that triggers us into being active or inactive, depending on the time of day. What happens if we start triggering different things by putting artificial light into our environment? Well, studies have shown increased links with diabetes, neurological disorders such as Parkinson's disease, even breast cancers have been linked with artificial light at night. Okay, so I've touched on wildlife a little bit, but wildlife and ecosystems require darkness. And we know that. We've got the biggest population of nocturnal species in the world. And it's possibly because our environment is so hostile and so hot, and the animals have it just adapted to work out their systems at night. But we've known for over 100 years that turtles are impacted by light. And those tiny little hatchlings about the size of a mini Mars bar make their way down the beach from where their mums laid their eggs, and they're looking for a way to get out to water and out to start their new world. But what happens if they don't have that clear definition of horizon and can't see the water, if the light's bouncing off in different directions, or if there's houses or petrol stations or street lights or whatever, you can see down the bottom there that turtles get confused, and around and around and around they go, with lots and lots of seagulls and birds of prey over the top of them, pecking them off. So very few of them are making it to the water if there are lights around. And then we've discovered that they actually continue that same circle of not knowing, and we're going in the right direction, for 3 to 6 kilometres in the water as well. So we're really putting a lot of stress on these poor little creatures. Here's another little creature that we know about, and this is one in Western Australia called the Tamar wallaby. And the island on the right-hand side there is Garden Island in Western Australia. It's half naval and half parks and wildlife. So someone said about, Dr. Kylie Roberts said about testing the animals in both areas to see if there was any difference between those living in the naval base area and those living in the forested area. And what they discovered was that the babies born in the naval base area were actually having their breeding cycle pushed off by about a month. Now, that might not sound that bad, but what was happening is that the plants that those babies are reliant on to feed with, and the milk that the mothers are making because they've got those plants, etc., are all in a different cycle. And so there was fewer babies and, more impact to fatalities of the fetuses and babies themselves. So just simply by putting light into these areas, we know that we are actually changing behaviours of breeding and reproduction. And then there's a little clownfish that they did the similar sort of thing, put 100 clownfish into a room that had a natural day-night cycle. The fish went through their breeding pattern, they laid the eggs hatched, and off they went, and that was fabulous. They did the same thing, putting an artificial light at night, similar to those that would be around our marinas and areas like that, remembering that these fish are shallow fish. They're around very shallow waters, around the tidal areas, which is exactly where our artificial light would normally spill. So these creatures, 100 eggs or 100 breeding pairs were put in, they laid their eggs, and not one of the eggs hatched. The only factor that was different was light at night. So what are we doing to species? And we know just that we can use light to help us with greenhouses. We have this fabulous way of using light to help us bolster our food supplies. This is a greenhouse factor area in Russia, I believe. And you can just see how much light spill that's creating into the environment there. And even just our street lights are actually faking that sort of false greenhouse effect, I guess. So our trees and our native vegetation, etc., is actually being triggered into thinking that the seasons are slightly different. So yeah, we know it's having a big impact. And finally, our pollinators, literally like a moth to a flame, these bees, bats, birds, moths, little tiny beetles, etc., that are doing their great work at night aren't making it to the flowers or the crops that we need them because of all our street lights. And there's a big movement in some of the southern states in America to actually start taking out street lights to help improve their crop pollination. And then finally, just on this, I think it's finally, we've got a picture on the right-hand side, which is actually a color spectrum of light that is created by LED lights. Now, our eyes can probably see, about the middle band of that, red, blue, like the color of the rainbow. But to the left, we've got ultraviolet, and to the right, we've got infrared. Now you can see that our LED lights particularly have a very high blue spike. And that high blue spike correlates with the picture on the bottom, which is actually where you can see turtles, birds, beetles, butterflies, fish. That ultraviolet part is actually where those animals see. So our LED lights and our street lights and things like that, even our televisions, could actually be blinding these species. And we certainly know that they're very reluctant and very impacted by being around those sorts of lights. So 6, let's talk about some benefits of darkness. So what inspiring new opportunities do we have? Well, I'm going to start with a negative. And as I said at the beginning, only about 20% of the world can see a night sky, a starry night sky. And we saw that map, which showed Australia very, very dark in comparison, particularly to the Northern Hemisphere. Now, last chance tourism is actually about people going to see things in places that might disappear. So Mount Everest, the Great Barrier Reef, all these sorts of things that we think might not be around for very long is actually now getting an influx of tourists because people think that they might not see it. It's not quite the same, but a lot of places around the world have lost their night sky. On a good night, they might see half a dozen planets. And so Australia has a huge opportunity to bring people into our country to see these dark sky places. And this is a designation that's actually been created by the International Dark Sky Association, or Dark Sky International as it's now called. We have 7 designated dark sky parks around the country. So these are places that have dedicated, just like you would land care or anywhere else, any of those conservation programs. Rather than just looking at the place during the day, they're looking at conserving that environment at nighttime. So making it wildlife sensitive, taking out lights that are inactive or not used, and making sure that the lights that they do use are the ones that really should be there. And we're finding an absolute abundance of people going to those dark sky places. I'm proud to say I've been the founder of 2 of those dark sky places, one in the Warrumbungles and one at Palm Beach in New South Wales. But I know of at least another half dozen that have been created right now, and excited to see more. But even if you're not a dark sky place, there are lots of things you can be doing to encouraging people to come and stay with you. So, overnight tourism doubles because, of course, you have to have at least an overnight stay there. There's lots of things. Anything that your town is doing, you could do it with a dark sky backdrop or an understanding of dark skies. And people are flocking to it to really see something different. Oh, that's the last one that was created. Now, the thing about dark skies too is that there's an ongoing impact. So these beautiful images that Warrumbungle National Park and Palm Beach dark sky places have created a demonstration. And I love this saying by David Attenborough: no one will protect what they don't care about. No one will care about what they've never experienced. So getting kids out to the country to see the dark sky, getting people out to look through a telescope, getting people to sit and listen to opera under the stars, all those sorts of things suddenly make the darkness not scary anymore, and make it something that people actually start to crave. So removing light pollution is an easy fix. Now, this is number 7. And I could talk about this for ages, but this is basically the ozone hole. And since the 1979 awareness of the ozone hole being discovered, and the Montreal Protocol coming in 1985, we can kind of see that, and scientists believe that the work that was done in 1985 has been beneficial. They also suggest that it will probably take 50 to 100 years to actually reduce the ozone hole completely. But the thing with us is that literally with light pollution, it is the easiest thing to solve, because as soon as you turn that light off, you've removed the pollution. There's nothing else. It's instantaneous, and you've increased viability in the area. It's just a matter of ongoing good habits, really, that make it long-term sustainable. And I like to talk about light giving us the perception of safety rather than actual safety. So if we put too much light into our environment, we create glare, and that's actually another element of light pollution. You know how hard it is. Sometimes headlights, street lights can do that, or even just too much lighting in a car park or something could be too much. So it's about using the right amount of light for the right purpose, pointing it in the right direction so it's not in our eyes. Little tiny basic steps to make sure that we are being kept safe. Now, the thing is about glare is if you've got light in your eyes take 20 minutes to fully dark adapt. So if your eyes are going big, small, pupils small, big, you can actually create a little bit of blindness, and it can be that you can't actually see the big, bad, scary man standing there because, your eyes haven't adjusted properly. So it's not about putting more light in that makes us safe. It's about using it correctly and making sure that we're aware of how we're using it. Again, even for safety, because it's very easy for councils, groups, anyone just to think, I'll put more lights in and it'll make me safer. But there's a lot to say that it doesn't actually work. In fact, one of my colleagues says if you're going to light a place up like Pentridge Prison, then it probably is what it's going to look like. Okay, and I did touch on this before. Reducing light pollution reduces our carbon footprint. And this is some statistics. In America, we don't have much data on it in Australia, but we know that if we're running lights in our house, putting light out into the garden, putting lights, our power bill goes up. So why would we do it? We don't need to have it out there. We just need to have the lights on that we actually need when we actually need them. And streetlights are actually making a lot of change with this. You might start seeing, if you haven't already, streetlights like this one with a little hub on the top there, and that's smart lighting. So there's a lot of things that can be done with this. Not a lot of councils have actually started turning it on. I think something like 73% of councils around Australia have this smart lighting technology, but only something like 3 or 5% have actually started using it. And it means that you can do things like turning street lights on when you actually, as you're walking down the street or as you're driving down the street, the light turns on 50 meters ahead of you. So it's not on all the time. We can dim it so that it's not bright light at between 11 o'clock at night and 5 a.m. in the morning. We can make it warmer. We can make it cooler depending on the area. We could make it better light if it's foggy, etc. So you don't have that bright white light penetrating and not actually seeing anything. So there's lots that can be done with this. There's technologies that we can use. We just need to start using them more wisely. And finally, drum roll please, 50% of our natural environment is night. Now, we often, as a diurnal species, a group of animals that live on this planet and are most active during the day, who thrive, who run to light, who are entertained by light, we don't think about what's happening at night. but it is there. It is a very, very important part of our ecosystems, our natural environment, our own human well-being, as I've talked about, with our health, etc. And it's not thought about. So how can we make you think about how special, especially where you're living right now, how special that environment is? How can we get more people to engage with it and truly love it as much, or at least not fear it and not try and conquer it by pouring light into it unnecessarily? So that's my quest for you. I hope you've enjoyed the talk. As I said, I'm Marnie Ogg from the Australasian Dark Sky Alliance. My company, my travel company is Dark Sky Traveller. And I am very, very keen to hear from you. So if you'd like to write to me, you are more than welcome at marnie@darkskytraveller.com.au. Please send me any questions. But on a final note, we have a petition to council, no, not council, to the federal government. We need 10,000 signatures asking people to sign up to legislate light pollution mitigation. If you would like to take that QR code and sign our petition, we would be very, very grateful. With 3 days, we've just started it 3 days ago and we've already got nearly 2,000 signatures. So that's fantastic. But of course, we'd love your support. I hope to hear from you soon. Have a wonderful night. Enjoy the David Malan Images presentation and the wonderful work that Carly and Mel will do with you tonight too. Have a good evening. Bye.